Hi, thanks. Today you're watching my Yamaha R1 front wheel removal. First thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the bolts which hold the caliper on. So once we get this caliper bolts off, we're going to give the caliper just a little wiggle on the brake rotor. And what that'll do is spread the brake pads for you. Next we're going to take our 22mm wrench and we're going to remove the bolt that retains the axle. And now we're back to removing our left side caliper. Again, we're just going to pull the bolts out. Once we get the bolts completely out, we're just going to wiggle the caliper on the rotor just enough to get the brake pads separated so we can slide the caliper off the rotor without hitting the wheel. Now we're just going to loosen up the cinch bolts on the front forks. These keep the axle from sliding around or coming out. And with a multi-hex head, we put it in the axle and just start turning. And as we turn, we want to put some pressure on the ratchet, and it'll actually pull that axle out. And then just easily spin the axle and pull at the same time, and your wheel's free. Once we get that wheel out, we'll just drop the wheel down and we're going to pull the dust covers off, and now we're ready to put a new tire on. So here we are with the brand new Michelin Pilot Road 3. So we're going to take our dust covers and we're going to clean them up, make sure we get all the dirt and debris off of them, and we're going to insert them in each side of the wheel. Now we take our axle, we're going to clean our axle off, and the axle we're going to put a light coat of grease. It's going to help protect the axle from the bearings. When you pull your axle out, look at it. You can see where the bearings ride on it. Remember, your axle's not turning, but those bearings are turning on your axle and they're riding in one place all the time. So we want to do as much as we can to eliminate any kind of wear and degradation that may come from that wheel beating on that axle as you're going down the road at 100 miles an hour. So we're going to stick our axle in the fork, and then we're going to grab our wheel and we're going to lift it up and kind of align it with the axle coming through the fork, and then we just slide our axle on through and give it a few pops just to hammer it home. Now we're going to put our 22mm bolt back in, and we're going to tighten it down. And what it's going to do is it's going to get so tight and align the front end of your bike. And then we're going to come back and we're going to tighten up the cinch bolts on the right hand side, and then this will allow us to tighten down the 22mm bolt all the way. So now we tighten down our cinch bolts. If you've never done this before, get yourself a torque wrench. You don't want to over tighten these. And with our 22mm wrench, we're going to go ahead and finish tightening up this axle nut. So once we get this axle bolt in there, tightened down, then we can tighten down the cinch bolts on the left-hand side. And we'll be done with the axle part of our install. Alright, now let's put some calipers on. So because our brake pads are separated a little bit, it makes our caliper just slide on so much nicer. Last thing you want to do is scratch your wheel. Believe me, you'll be pissed if you slide your caliper on and take a big chunk of paint out of your wheel. I know this is somebody else's bike and they'd be pretty pissed at me if I were scratching up their wheels. So now we're going to put the caliper on the other side. Same thing. We're just going to slide it on. A little wiggle, slides right into place. And then we're going to put our caliper bolts back in there and tighten them down. Alright, with all our bolts tightened down, wheel spins freely. Last thing to do is to pump the front brake lever. Don't ever let your bike leave the garage without knowing that you have a good friction service hit. Thanks for watching my video.